football. And if you weren't here last week, and like Jason said, I really hope you'll get on our phone app or get on our website and listen or watch the message, because last week was the introduction. It was foundational. And I'll refer to it today, but if you haven't seen it yet, please do that sometime this week, okay? And the thing that is we're doing all through this entire series is I said we're going to be asking a question, and I want you to say it all during the week, hopefully. But today especially, I want you to say it with me. And let's put that question up on screen. Yeah, it's coming. Here it is. Ready? Let's say it together. Am I taking responsibility for my life? Really? Now wait, you did it good. You participated better than any other of the gatherings so far. But I need more attitude in the really. For my life, really? I mean, you can even do it, really? Do it in your face if you want to. You ready? Okay, here we go. Am I taking responsibility for my life? Really? There you go. Now, the reason that you have to say it like that is because we could just say, am I taking responsibility for my life? And most of us would say, well, of course. What do you think? That's me. I take responsibility. No one's going to say I'm basically an irresponsible person. And so this is so we really take a look at ourselves. And so, am I taking responsibility for my life? Really? I want us to ask ourselves that question. And this is all about responsibility versus irresponsibility. Irresponsibility is when I don't take responsibility for the things that I'm responsible for. It's a real simple definition there. Last week, if you weren't here, let me just back up a little bit, give you a little of what we talked about. The main thing that I wanted you to get, if you got nothing else, was this, that you were created to be responsible. You were created to be responsible. We look back at Adam and Eve, and it was a great look at that. Hope you'll make sure you see that. But you were created, just like Adam and Eve were, they were given a responsibility, very first thing, and God has created you to be responsible. And we found out that you're happiest when you have responsibility and when you're taking responsibility. When you just, you've got something that you ought to be doing well, mom or dad or worker or whatever it is, and you just feel like, man, I've done that well. You feel good. And the reason is that's God's imprint on your life. He created you like that. We also said that responsible people don't need a lot of rules. They don't need a lot of laws. And I personally think that's the reason we got in our workplaces and in our country, we've got so many rules, so many regulations, because all those are to control the actions of irresponsible people. It may sound pie in the sky, but if people took responsibility for their lives, really, wouldn't need half the rules and regulations that we've got. And we also found this is the one thing that most of you went away with. Your irresponsibility, my irresponsibility, it affects other people. It's not just me. It's just not I'm the man or a woman on the island by myself. It affects other people that I'm connected with. And my irresponsibility eventually becomes someone else's responsibility. And they are left picking up the pieces for my mess, picking up the chaos that I've created. And I'm here to tell you that creates conflict. Now, I did this week myself. Because I've been thinking about this all week. And so I go into the bathroom, and I use a tissue to blow my nose, and I take it, and I pitch it in between the cabinet and the shower curtain. There's a wastebasket there. Pitch it in there. Only thing is, it missed. It bounced off the wall, went on the floor. And so I immediately, what did I do? I started to walk out. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I can't do it, because my irresponsibility in there, it means Sue's going to pick it up. Every time I'm irresponsible, someone else has to pick up the mess. And some of you are really hurting today. It's not that you've been irresponsible, but it's that someone in your life has been irresponsible, and you're picking up the mess. You're picking up the chaos. And if that's you, I feel sorry for you. I hope that today will give you some hope. And next week especially, we're going to talk about more. But to get in today, I want to talk about for a moment something that's you're going to think, where'd this come from? This is totally off the wall. There are some principles in life that God has set in place as part of his creation. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just there. And they're often working in the backgrounds of our life, and we don't even realize that they're there many times. One of those is the law, you call it law, principle of gravity, right? I mean, most of the time you don't think about that too much, law of gravity is out there, and you know intuitively, you know, that if I step off here, I'm not going to float in the air, I'm going to end up on the floor. And you know intuitively that if I did up a 10-story building, I would go splat. That's just, you know, how gravity works. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun to show you something that happened to me this week, because I was standing out in front of the church and I'm thinking, man, it'd be cool to experience not having gravity. And so I prayed this awesome prayer. I said, God, let me feel for a second what it's like if there's no gravity. Watch. So I don't think I want to do that again. Gravity is a pretty good thing, actually, I think. But you know, y'all know what gravity is pretty much. You may not understand it all, but it's a principle out there that is working. Now, there's another principle that goes along with that I'm actually going to educate you today. And you're going to go back home and you're going to say, wow, I really learned something at church, you know, and I don't know how practical it's going to be for you, this first part, but you will have learned it. And if you're a pilot, I invite you to correct me if you think I'm wrong afterwards. But when you fly in an airplane, you know, you just fly in it, and if you're like me, sometimes you wonder, man, I just can't believe a machine of this size can actually get off the ground, that this thing can actually fly. You go by an airport and you watch them taking off and flying. It's something, there's something magical about that, actually. And what I found out is this, and you know this, it's not magical at all. A plane's wing, even though you can't see it without looking closely, this is the shape of an airplane wing. It's called an airfoil. And every airplane that's going to fly has that shape in the wing. Here's how it works, okay? The air comes this way, and so this air on the bottom just rushes right past. There's no obstacle at all. But at the top, because of the way this is like just a little teardrop, that air hits that, and then it goes around it like that. Now, it has to go the same distance from there to there. But because it's only has a certain amount of time to do that, that air that is flowing there is actually flowing over the top of that wing faster than the air below. And the thing that happens is this: air that's moving faster has less pressure. And so that's how these planes work. When it's flowing like that, there's less air pressure on the top of that plane, on top of that wing, compared to the atmospheric pressure below. And you get that plane going fast enough, and the pressure from the bottom is going to push up on the bottom of the wing because there's less pressure on the top, and the plane flies. Now, it's the same reason why right down here at the bottom, you see that they put the flaps out when they're taking off or when they're landing. The reason for the flaps are, if you're on the runway, unless you've got a runway that's 5 miles long, you're not going to get up the speed that you need to get the lift. And so they put those flaps down, which gives more of an area for the air to come over, and you get more lift with less speed. And so once the airplane gets off the ground and the jet engines are propelling it forward, it's getting more speed, then they can retract the flaps. And then you fly, and then they have to put them down when you slow down again when you land. You say, why are you telling me this, Bill? It's this. That principle of the air pressure and lift in an airplane, that's not a religious principle. Not a religious principle. It's not good or it's not bad. It just is. And it's operating in the background of our lives, and it's operating in every time a plane is flown, no matter or not, whether you know it or not. Now, God, I know, is not up in heaven indiscriminately deciding, well, let's see, that plane's going to fly, that plane's not going to fly. This one's going to fly, I'll let these two fly, this one, no. You don't have someone at Boeing that builds a plane, and then he gathers all the team around, and they have a prayer meeting. Please, God, this plane that we've created, would you help it to fly? No. When you create a plane that's in line with this law of physics that God has already put in place, the plane is going to fly every time. If you don't take this into consideration, the plane isn't even going to get off the ground. You see, God created everything. Even these principles of physics, these laws that are working in the background of our lives. He isn't up in heaven making random decisions about the plane, nor is he making random decisions about your life. Gravity, air pressure, it's not good, it's not evil, it just is. And it's there for you to either ignore it and your plane crashes, or leverage it and you're able to fly. Now, why have I told you that? It's because there's another principle that runs in the background of our lives. And it's a principle that many of you heard long time ago. Maybe you didn't even know that it was from the Bible. But it's often not on our radar while we're making decisions. Why is that? Because it's not immediate. It's not immediate. And when we ignore it, there are going to be consequences, or we can use it for our good. We can leverage it, just like this whole thing of air pressure, but it's different. And you've heard this before. It's this: people reap what they sow. You've heard that before, right? Maybe you didn't know it was from the Bible. People reap what they sow. In other words, the title of the message today, you're going to get what's coming to you. And I don't mean that in necessarily a bad way, but you're going to get what's coming to you. People reap what they sow. Now, you know what? If you've got a King James Bible, you probably read this: whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Or you could say reapeth, all those crazy ways they used to talk back then. That's the way they actually talked. That's why I often tell people, don't read this stuff in your King James Bible. If you got one, you love it, may keep it or throw it away. Get yourself one that you can read, okay? Just from your pastor. Don't get mad at me. I'm just saying, okay? Make sure you got a Bible that you can understand. But this is what it says here. People reap what they sow. And this principle, please get this. This is the reason that your irresponsibility eventually catches up with you. And that my irresponsibility eventually catches up with me. It's not good, it's not bad. It just is. It's this law, this rule that God has put in place. And you can leverage it for good things. You're going to love that. Or you can ignore it, and there'll be consequences every single time. It's just the way it is. And as we talk about this today, you're going to see something. You're going to see that, when things go bad in your life, when things happen, you're tempted to say, well, God must not love me. We're going to see today, God is not against you, God is for you. God isn't necessarily angry with you. He's not up in heaven arbitrarily saying, I'm going to bless this person, punish this person, or bless this person, or arbitrarily with your life even, bless, punish, bless, punish. He's not just up there doing that without, it seeming like he's making those kind of decisions. No, he's not. He loves you more than you can ever imagine, and so he gave you this principle to either use it for your own good or to ignore it. He wants you to use it, to leverage it. So he's trying to teach this, the Apostle Paul is, to a church in Galatia. And it's the church he established, and he's wanting them to learn some important things. It's right at the end. He's got 6 chapters in this book, and right near the end, he's pulling together these last-minute things that he really wants these people to understand. And so, this is what he says, chapter 4, verse 6. Chapter 6, verse 4, I'll get it right. Each one should test his own actions. Each one should test his own actions, because he's talking to a church that these people had been more than likely than not to compare themselves with one another. That's kind of what they were doing. He said, no, each one should test his own actions. Make an honest examination of your own life. Don't focus on others and what they do or what's happened in their life. Focus on yourself. In other words, evaluate, he's telling the Galatians, evaluate your actions and your reactions against what? Against you. Look in the mirror. That's why we are saying, am I taking responsibility for my life? Really? Because it's hard for us to look in the mirror and to see this. But he's saying, evaluate yourself against yourself. Don't compare with somebody else. Then that person can take pride in himself. This is a good kind of pride. It's that kind of thing I said, when you take responsibility and you do it well, you feel good about yourself. That's what the Apostle Paul is saying. He can take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else. Because sometimes the only way we feel good is we compare to somebody else and we see that their life sucks and they've made all these mistakes. We haven't made quite that many mistakes, and so we think we're pretty good. He said, no, don't compare like that. Because when you compare yourself to other people, you're tempted to become irresponsible. You're tempted, and I am too, to cut myself too much slack. you see someone that their life is kind of a mess, and you say, wow, I'm not perfect, and I've got some issues in my life, but man, I'm better than they are. I haven't done some of those things. That person's a total screw up. And so, I don't know if I need to do anything or not. I'm pretty good when I compare to somebody else. Or you look at somebody else and it seems like they seem to have it all together. And you wonder why, and you say, man, I don't have it as good as them. And look at their life. They have it so good. They had all these advantages. If I had their advantages, I could go places in life too. You know what? If I had their spouse, if I had their money, if I had their talent, if I had their education, then I could really do something. If I compare myself with you, I'm going to make excuses. If I compare myself with me, I'm going to make progress. I'm going to make progress. And he goes on and he gets very clear about this. Then he says in verse 5, why should we do this? Why? For we are each responsible for our own conduct. Can't say it any clearer. Just what we talked about last week. We, no matter what we've got in life, no matter what our life is like, we are all responsible for our own conduct. We can't blame people in the past, although they may have had something to do with it. Just like we said last week, stop the blaming. We take responsibility for where we are in life right now, and then we go on. When we blame people, we're never going to go anywhere. So we're each, he says, we are each responsible for our own conduct. Take responsibility for yourself. Don't compare. Don't excuse. We've all got family responsibilities, financial responsibilities. We've got opportunities and gifts. Take responsibility for you. I don't care, God is saying, what has happened in the past. Take responsibility for you. Don't blame. And then he goes a little more. He's getting toward this principle now. He says, do not be deceived. Why did he say that to them? Because we are really easily self-deceived. Because we can compare and we can deceive ourselves and think that, I'm a pretty responsible person, I'm okay, kind of thing. And look, this isn't about just doing a list of good things. Please understand that. This is not, that I earn points, brownie points with God because I do this good stuff. No, that's not what this is all about. He loves you just as you are. He loves you too much to let you stay that way. But it's not about earning God's love. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. He just says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. He's put something in place, and you can't mock it. And this word mocked here, it means he can't be sneered at. Like, you almost like with your tongue out kind of thing. You can't do that to God. He can't be outwitted. He can't be outsmarted. Like maybe some of you thought you could do with your parents. And maybe you did get by with it sometimes. You thought you were so cool, and maybe some of your teenagers, you're trying to do that right now. And maybe you did pull it over your parents' eyes sometimes, You get home and you say, oh, Dad, thanks for coming to get me at the jail. I didn't know that they had beer in the car. I didn't know. And so he gets stopped for speeding. There's the open container in there, and then I got taken off to jail. I didn't know. And then a lot of the parents, what we'll do is, well, that's terrible. I know Marty McCoy personally. I'm going to go there and explain the whole situation to him, and son, it'll all be fine, right? Or Dad, that teacher, I flunked the test, but this teacher didn't tell us ahead of time what was on the test. How am I supposed to pass the test when she doesn't tell me? Oh, well, I'll go and talk to the supervisor. I'll give that teacher, if she did that, she doesn't even deserve to be a teacher. Or Dad, Mom, look at this banking statement. The bank made a mistake. They made a mistake. Look, and now I've got this overdraft charge. All of these checks were coming in. They just credited them in the wrong order, and now I've got this $100 overdraft charge. And it's wrong. I must have money in there. I mean, I still have checks left, right? And so your dad said, or Mom, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to the president of the bank because this is crazy. They ought to have their act together. And maybe you did that. You pulled over the wolf, so you thought, for your parents. And you thought maybe you can talk to your friends, oh, they're so gullible. Now, someone pulled me aside after the first gathering and said, Bill, you just gave a lot of kids ideas about what not to do. or about what to do. That's okay. I'm going to own this, okay? When I was a teenager, I was in high school, and I didn't want to go to school for a few days. Just didn't want to. And it's probably because I hadn't studied and I didn't want to go and, read the consequences. And so I wrote this rather, a permission slip for something, and I told my mom I needed her signature on, right? So I wrote it out the top, put a line down the bottom, said signature. So my mom looked at it, yeah, sure, signs it. I go, since I had put a lot of space in there, I cut the top half off, wrote a different note above her signature, and took it in, and it said basically, please excuse Billy he was absent for 3 days, he wasn't feeling good. And I'm thinking, oh, my folks are so gullible. I found out later my folks knew a lot more of what was going on than I let on. But you know what? The Apostle Paul is saying this. Look, God is not your mama. God is not your daddy. Don't try that stuff on God. You really think he's going to pamper you? And we go to him like, oh, God, I had sex with this person. Please don't let me be pregnant. Or, I got this final I didn't study for. Oh, God, you're a God of grace. You can do anything. You're able. We just sang about it. And so please put that stuff into my head. I know you can do that so I can pass this test. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, we got this magic prayer. And real Christians are good at this. We all have this religious system. Some people think, I'll just pray to God. God, forgive my sins, right? Will he forgive me? Yes, he'll forgive me every single time. And the Bible also says in one place that, doesn't it say this? That he will never remember those against me anymore. He won't remember. And so that means I can go to God next week after I've done all that stuff again, and I can just say, God, forgive me. And he's like, I don't remember you ever did that before. Really? You think God's got amnesia? Or, I just say, forgive me, God, and with the intention of, I'll go out and do the same thing. Forgive me, God. Now, will God forgive? Yeah. Or, and please understand, I'm not saying this about any specific religious tradition. I'm just putting it out there. Some of you grew up with this, that you would sin all during the week. You do whatever you want to. You knew it wasn't what God wanted you to do or something. And you'd come and you go into this little booth and you talk to the screen for a minute. And you take your sin bucket, you'd empty it out. Then you go out and do the same stuff all over again. Next week you come back and talk the screen, pour the bucket out, and you go back out again. Seriously? We've got some of the craziest things that people do in the name of religion. Does God love you? Yes. Will he always forgive you? Yes. Will he take the consequences away? No. Because he has put this law into effect. People reap what they sow. And that's what he's running up to here. And he says this finally. Here's where the scripture says that a person reaps what he sows. You're going to get what's coming to you. It's not a threat. It's just that life is connected. That's what the Apostle Paul is saying. Life is connected. There's a correlation between the past and now. There's a correlation between what you did in the past and what's happening now in your life. And there will be a correlation between our decisions, our actions right now, and the future of our life. God's just saying that's just the way the world works. There's going to be this correlation. A person reaps what he sows. Now, it doesn't say this. It doesn't say people reap what they sow unless they ask God for forgiveness. No. It doesn't say people reap what they sow unless they go to church. People reap what they sow unless they apologize. No, it just says people reap what they sow. You can't wish your way out of this. You can't pray your way out of it or obey your way out of it, love your way out, serve your way out of it, or give your way out of it. And it isn't good news and it isn't bad news. It's just news. And you can make it work for you, or you can make it work against you. You reap what you sow. You can ignore it and reap the consequences, or you can use it and reap the benefits. There's a price, the Apostle Paul is saying. There's a price for irresponsible living, and there is a reward for responsible living. And that's true if you're a Christian or you're not a Christian. This is just one of those principles God's put out there in the world. It's like gravity. It's like air pressure, all that stuff. Now, here's something you need to understand, though. I can't do this message without telling you this. Reaping usually comes at a later time and in a greater amount. If you remember those two words, later and greater. Reaping usually comes at a later time and in a greater amount. And we all intuitively understand this. Isn't this a dumb illustration? But a farmer doesn't go out, plant seed, go eat some supper, go to bed, get some sleep, get up the next morning, and go out and harvest the crop. It doesn't work like that. We know that. You say, Bill, that's really stupid. Yeah, but that's what a lot of us think. Paul is using this metaphor because people back then understood that it was more of an agricultural system. They understood this. Reaping usually comes at a later time and in a greater amount. Later, in the context of our lives, later is why we don't dare give up now doing the right thing. We don't dare give up because you're not going to reap the results of that until afterwards, later. It's not immediate. Later. That's why we do give up, though, sometimes. It's why we do. It's why we do the right thing on Monday, but then Tuesday's a disaster, Wednesday's a disaster, the next week's a disaster, the next month, maybe the next year's a disaster, and we give up too soon. Later is why sometimes we look at irresponsible people, maybe even evil people, and it seems like their lives are fine. It's because they haven't reached later yet. And we look at them and we say, why am I being responsible? I'm trying to be responsible. Look at my life. It's kind of a mess. But, look at why am I being responsible with my family or with my money or in my marriage? Because look at those people. And later, it's why we just give up too soon and why we sometimes envy irresponsible people because later has not come yet for them or for us. So it's later, and it's always usually greater. And you know this. A farmer doesn't put one seed in the ground and expect to get one seed back. One plant. Puts that seed in, and it multiplies. And that's what God says. This can work for you as well in your life. You see, your irresponsibility will cost you big time sometime in the future because it gets magnified. It's greater. And your responsibility will pay you even greater dividends sometime in the future. Positive or negative, it's going to be greater, later and greater. Now, if you've got one area of your life today that you don't really think you're where you should be, maybe in your finances, your dating, other relationships, whatever, chances are, not 100%, but chances are that you sowed and reaped yourself to right where you're at right now. I love you. I'm not trying to be mean. I love you enough to tell you the truth. If you're in some area of life right now, like your finances, marriage, whatever, and it's not where you thought you would be, there's a good chance that you sowed and reaped your way to that situation. And you want to say, oh, my plane didn't fly. I don't know why. Because you ignored the principle. So today, as I close this up, if you don't like where you are in life, I want to show you how to use this principle in these next few moments, how to make it real this week, and then on into the future, okay? So here it is. First, here's my challenge to you, my project for you this week. Identify and own your actions and decisions. Sit down sometime, and it won't take that long, but identify your own actions and your decisions and own them. Kind of like the pie up here. Let's let that pie represent all the chaos that's in your life or in some area of your life, in your marriage, in your finances, in your relationship with your kids, your parents, your spouse, your schooling, whatever it is. And ask this question, what is my slice of the pie? Easy question. What is my slice of the pie? Now, most of us, we like to say, I don't have any slice in the pie. It's all that other person's fault. And we like to blame. We said last week, don't do that. You got to get to that point where have I sown irresponsibility in the past? And at least say, yeah, my slice of the pie, it might be a little one, but I at least have that. Even if you come to the point you say, I've got this little slice of the pie, you have come a long way because most people don't ever get there. They're just always blaming somebody else. And maybe you'll find your slice of the pie was actually pretty big. Now, if you're in a marriage and the marriage isn't going too well, I guarantee that you would come to me and you say, I don't have a slice. Or you certainly wouldn't put your slice any bigger than that middle one. That's just kind of what we tend to do. But what's my slice of the pie? Go back to the decisions that you made that resulted in you being where you don't want to be right now. Maybe you would say, Bill, I've got this distance with my kids right now, and I don't know, I don't think I was to blame at all for this. But then if you get honest, you say, you know what, my slice of the pie is that when my kids were young, I prioritized my work over my kids. That's my slice. Or you know what, I feel like I'm a roommate with my husband. I don't know how that happened. I really don't know how that happened. We're just kind of together. That spark we had is gone. It's all his fault. What if you got to the point where you said, you know, my piece of the pie, my slice, is that I prioritized the kids over him early in our marriage? What if my health's not good? And I just say, you know, it just happened. I mean, I just lived like everybody else. I just took care of myself the way everybody else does. What if you said, my slice of the pie is this? You know, I didn't eat right. I abused my body. I abused alcohol for years. That's my slice of the pie. Can I tell you, I met someone here last night that hasn't been coming to Dayspring all that long. And he told me, these 2 messages, he said, have been about me. Because I said, I did that when I was younger. I abused alcohol. And he said, because of that, I did it so much. People were telling me, don't do it, it's going to be bad and everything else. He said, I ruined my liver, or my kidney. And so I had to get a kidney transplant. And apparently there's still a lot of ramifications to that. And he said, I can't work now. And he's a good strapping guy, he could work. He said, I can't do it because of the medical condition. I've got these constant bills. And my wife had to go out and get a job, a low-paying job, just to be able to pay our bills. And she is stuck picking up the pieces of my irresponsibility, the chaos in my life. I felt so sorry for him. What's your piece of the pie? My finances are a mess. Oh, my piece of the pie is, yeah, I did misuse my credit card in the past. Or I got hurt by that person that I was dating, and they were just terrible to me. Well, my piece of the pie, I did say yes to that date, even though people had told me to be careful. Even though I saw warning signs in the first few dates, I continued to date that person. I don't know if it was because of my own insecurities or what, but I continued to do that. That's my piece of the pie. Or my spouse cheated on me. I was warned beforehand. That's my piece of the pie. I was warned of his track record, and I went ahead and did it anyway. Or I had an affair. I don't know how that affair happened. I went ahead and had that affair, though, and it's just that my wife and I hadn't been close for a while in that area. The intimate part of our life hadn't been very close, and it just happened. Bill, I don't know how it happened. I don't think I really have any responsibility until that person gets to the point and say, you know what, my piece of the pie is when that old high school sweetheart messaged me on Facebook. I answered it. That's my piece of the pie. I don't know what it is for you, but we got to be honest. What's your piece of the pie? And the second thing is this then, just do the things you should have been doing all along. Do the things you should have been doing all along. Stop the irresponsibility in whatever area that is. And just say, I'm going to be responsible for my life. Really, really. And do this even if there are no immediate results. Because there might not be. Because it's always later and it's always greater. There might not be any immediate results. But if you wait, if you keep on doing the right thing, when you do, it isn't going to make God love you anymore. Okay, don't take that out of the equation. God loves you as much as he'll ever love you right now. But here's what the Apostle Paul promises us. He says in verse 9, let us not become weary in doing good. In doing the right thing, in being responsible. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest. At the proper time, in the future, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. My prayer for you is that you will not give up, that you will take your piece of the pie and that you'll do the things that you maybe should have been doing all along, and that you will not give up, because later, God's reward for that responsibility is going to be greater, and it just could knock your socks off. I've seen it happen in lives all through the years. Imagine the change there could be in your life and in your family. You bow your heads with me. Have you taken responsibility for your life, for your part of the chaos? Really? Really? It starts with stop making excuses, stop pointing the finger. It starts with saying, I'm going to own this. I'm not going to deceive myself. I'm not going to blame God. I'm not going to blame my girlfriend. I'm not going to blame my parents. It's me. It's me. And then to say, what do I need to do now that I should have been doing? Because this principle will either bless you or catch up with you every single time. Will you take responsibility for your life, really, for your money, your marriage, your morality, your relationships, your school, your work? Father, I pray that you would give my people courage this week. Courage to own their piece of the pie. Courage to start doing the right thing that maybe they should have been doing all along. The courage to keep going even when they don't see results right away. The courage to believe your promise that if they don't get weary of doing the right thing, the good thing, that at the proper time they will reap a harvest if they don't give up. The courage to them to not give up. I pray that you would give some of them courage as they're having to clean up the mess of some other person. Give them the courage, Lord, not to keep enabling that person. God, give us courage this week. We look forward to seeing what you are going to do in our lives, the changes you are going to make. Because today we are taking responsibility for our lives, really.